Welcome to another episode of the Distributed Data Show, brought to you by DataStax Academy, where we bring you the latest news and interview technical experts to help you succeed at building large-scale distributed systems.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Distributed Data Show. I'm a technical evangelist, Dave Gilardi, and this is Brian Sweater Vest Hess. I'm sorry, I had to do that.
That's all right. I get it.
All right, and so today we're going to dig into DSE 6 Analytics, and all the new fun things that are going on with analytics.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about.
All right, let's go.
All right, so
you tell me.
All right. I kind of break it down to three pieces. The first one is DSE's. We made an investment for our analytics stuff to be very heavy on Apache Spark. That does the lion's share of our stuff. Every release we put out, we update the version of Spark we have. So there's not a lot to be said. We're bringing in Spark 2.2. Okay. And so there's a bunch of things that we just kind of get from improvements on the engine itself and performance, et cetera, and some connector pieces. So that one is just there, right? So that's sort of table stakes. Then there's sort of two big things that I think are worth talking about. We'll probably talk about both. One is just improvements we've made about how how we modified Spark or enhanced Spark in the connector to leverage DSE as a whole and be better, faster, stronger. And then another thing that we've introduced called Always On SQL, which is a ODBC, JDBC service so that we can, for those people who just don't want to write Scala, right? I mean, there's a lot of people who just, we say, hey, I'm trying to do this stuff with Cassandra. How do you do a group by count? It's like, well, we got Spark. That's how we do that in DataStax Enterprise. And they're like, I don't want to learn Scala. And it's like, well, you don't need to learn Scala. Like, what? Like you can do things with SQL. Do you know SQL? Okay. So we really sort of said, well, if that's a use case we want to make that also bigger, stronger, faster, easier to use. Production ready, and so there's a whole thread on Always On SQL.
Okay, so something you just mentioned right there, and we went right by it, right?
Yeah.
Was the enhancements in DSE 6 Analytics to performance.
Yes.
Right. So can you just real quick?
Sure.
What's going on there?
So there's a couple things that we hit on performance. There's one of the big ones I'll make a shout out from DSE 5.1 was this thing called continuous paging. It was a thing we did in both the server and in our connector to really just grab data quite a bit faster. So focusing on just the scan, right? A lot of the analytics starts with scan a bunch of data from the database and do things to it. That improvement actually was 3-4 times faster, depending on what you're doing. Your mileage may vary, but we were seeing 3 a lot. We saw 4 a good number of times as well. So that's just straight up performance, raw reading from Cassandra, and that's huge, right? That changes a lot of what you're going to do. A couple other improvements in the on the performance side. There's a new kind of join we did. There's a really common join that exists in databases where you do a lookup. You get your table you're scanning, and you're just going to go do lookups against the database to add, to join the data together. Right. If you think about it, Cassandra is awesome about doing these little lookups. Right. So we just made that super fast. There are certain use cases that we've seen where this is really really good performance. On a scan kind of, in a batch query kind of thing, but we also see it often in a streaming. So we got a benefit on both. Oh, cool. Where you have a stream coming in and you want to enhance what that stream has based on looking on data in Cassandra. Another common use case we see. And so this new, I think we're calling it the direct join. Okay. And it's also enhanced, direct join. And a lot of these things that we were trying to do were really around the user doesn't have to explicitly say it. Like we're going to be smart enough to be like, well, you probably want to use this. Interesting. And you can kind of tweak the knobs.
So it's behind the scenes kind of?
Yeah. Okay. There's ways to invoke it explicitly with the direct join. Okay. But I think most of the people are going to be like, well, when was I supposed to use it? I see. And our developers were like, well, this is when you're supposed to use it, so we're just going to do it for you.
Okay, so there's some intelligence baked in here that will kind of figure that out for you in certain cases.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it's relatively heuristic where you can turn some knobs, but it's cool. Yeah, and we can get smarter over time because we've got that there. The other one is actually leveraging the rest of the platform. So DSE Search is really good at certain things. Most people think about DSE Search, they think about like free text query, the like clause in SQL. Right. It's actually really also very good at Boolean queries where height is taller than 6 feet. Yeah. Is also a perfect search question. Okay. So we enhanced it to say if there's a search query index on the underlying data set, we'll just transform your little predicate in SQL or in Scholar, whatever it is, and we're just going to use the search.
Wait. All right. Yeah. Now I want to dig into this a little bit
cool.
more. Right. Yeah. So let's break this down a little bit. So are you saying in a case where, let's say I had a SQL, like a SQL-like query.
Yep.
And I'm using a like operator or contains operator or something like that, that potentially could be associated with a search, with search, right? That if I'm doing that from the Spark context or Spark SQL context within DSE6 Analytics, that if I have an index there, it will automatically go and use that?
That's right. So the old way prior to this was you either had to be explicit, that was a little bit weird, or Spark can do all of those operators, like that where clause of like where the name is Brian star. It can do it, but the database underlying doesn't do that. So it'll scan all of the data, send it to Spark, and then Spark will throw out everything but the Brians. That's not a very efficient way to do it, but it'll be correct. So we like correct. We like fast and correct. Search, what we're getting at is we're capturing that and saying, we're name like Brian. Well, there's a search index. I'll turn this into a DSE search query. And then the index says, well, here's the Brian's, and it's lightning fast.
That's totally rad.
But you also get, like I was trying to get at the sort of the other ones on things like where height is taller than 6 feet. If there's a search index, so you just say where height greater than 6 feet. We're going to turn that into the search query against that index too.
Now, are there cases where you use, say, a particular set of operators that could be associated with search that maybe it doesn't use search?
Yeah, so there are times, and this is kind of a funny.
This is being figured out underneath the hood, right? This is
there are times where, and this I think is true about like all indexed systems. If you're going to scan a lot of the index, if I go back to the Oracle days, the rule of thumb was sort of like at around 3 or 5%. If the index was going to return 3 to 5% or more of the data, the optimizer said, don't use it, just scan it. Because scanning through the index is actually slower than scanning through the table. But if you're going to get like, 0.1% of the data or smaller, you just got 3 or 4 records, the index is totally the way to go. Our developers were super smart, and they basically said at the prep time, we can actually query the index for search and just say, what's the count, right? Search is really good, and Lucene is really good at just returning a count. And so it's very fast to say, I'm going to return this many rows if you ask me for it. And we can make another heuristic. Is it more than 3%? If it's more than 3, we won't use search. We'll get it back. We'll scan it ourselves.
So it'll take the best path. It'll figure out the best path, and it'll take the best path for you. And all you had to do was essentially write an SQL-like query.
That's right.
That's kind of awesome.
Yeah, and
that's pretty awesome.
It is
that's
cool.
Awesome.
And if again, you can have there's some knobs. 3% was what we saw. I think that's what the default is. And if you go, but with my data, I know that 6% is the right number. Well, you can put that in and say, no, I know what I'm doing.
Now, what happens if you don't have a search index?
So if you don't have a search index, it goes back to Spark can do all of it. But the underlying database can't, so it just does a full table scan and sends it to you. So you're kind of
but it's managed from Spark. It's not like you're forcing an allow filtering down at the Cassandra level and like scanning all your nodes, or
you're still doing the same way that the Spark Cassandra connector, the DSE Spark connector reads. So it's breaking up the token ranges and grabbing it in pieces, and then applying the filterings and things there. So
that's cool. But I don't want to. So I don't want to gloss over how cool it is if I have search indexes that are set up on my tables, right? And if I'm using Spark SQL, that in DSE6. I can write an SQL-like query using the same syntax, like for this is a plug for the relational folks, right? If you've been in relational databases, for the last 20, 30, whatever years, right, as many of us have been, and you're used to writing SQL, and then you come into something like DSE, and it's got these different workloads, and there's been different languages, but now I can actually write this stuff in SQL, and as long as I have my search index there for in that particular case, then it would automatically leverage those capabilities, right? The best path, fastest capabilities, and allow me to just write SQL.
Yeah, I think there's 2 things on that. You're totally right. There's 2 pieces on that I'd sort of highlight. One of them is SQL, right? I thought it was NoSQL, right? It's like, no, actually, to be honest, since I've been here, I've largely been like the SQL guy at the NoSQL company. It's not a dirty word, right? Analytics involves SQL a lot. This is a good thing. It's not a problem. But it's also not the right way to do anything, right? So it's a way. So let's make it
the way that's been entrenched for a long, long time.
Right. So if there's a new person coming over and they know SQL, and we can provide them a good version of it, then we should do that and enable it. So I like this idea of if you like SQL and you know SQL, use it. And if you don't, then don't use it. That's okay. Or if you only want to do part of it. I also do a lot of things where sometimes I'll just say, well, give me the data frame in SQL, and then I'll go do other things that are not SQL-like from there.
Oh, okay.
So you can kind of mix and match.
So you can extend it. You can actually get even...
Yeah, you can kind of mix and match. The second thing I think was the other one that I kind of wanted to highlight was, again, me and also a lot of the engineers sort of saw this opportunity of, we can be clever and leverage the system in a way like the users weren't knowing they could do. Like, we're being smart for you.
Okay.
So it was the idea of, there's a search index. Can we use the search index for them? Because it's sitting right there.
Yeah,
the administrator set it up. We should use it.
Right.
And do we have to make it explicit? Like, there are times where you want to be explicit, but there's a lot of times you're just like, just do the smart thing. Yeah. And so I think that idea of you don't have to know a lot to get all the benefits. We're trying to do some of that heavy thinking for you. Okay. So that's sort of those are probably the big performance things, and then we kind of drifted into usability, which is totally important. It's not great if you need to take out lots and lots of manuals to figure out how to use the system.
And okay. So an anecdote on this, I mean, when the DSE 6 features were coming out, and I was testing things and that kind of deal, I sat down and in one of my studio notebooks, and I just was trying to use my prior SQL knowledge, right, to just write queries with joins and using the regular kind of operators I would expect. Right. And it took me no time to punch out these analytic queries that I didn't have to know any other language. Now, I myself, I'm okay with that. Yeah. But if I'm coming in from a world where maybe my business or something, you've got a whole set of DBAs, they're used to using SQL and that kind of deal, there's a barrier there. And I loved it because I was able, in an hour, I was able to punch out all these analytics queries, and they were SQL. They worked just like I would have expected, and I was like,
yeah. I mean, I think about sort of like the count group by kind of operations, those simple things where you go, I can do this without ever having to learn Maven or SBT or any of those things. That's right. I just want to run it. Yeah. And so actually that kind of dovetails a little bit from the SQL world into the always-on SQL.
I was totally going to go there, so do it.
So so you mentioned Studio. So one of the things that we did in Studio, probably for a different episode, was the ability to run SQL from Studio into DSE. Well, the way that it's connecting to is now in something we're calling Always On SQL, which is a ODBC, JDBC service that we're running that is your entry point into Spark. So the idea being that you can connect your regular tools or your own JDBC, ODBC programs, and you can connect in and issue SQL queries and get back results. I do a lot of stuff there where it's almost like ETL inside, where you'll do insert into this table, select maybe this roll. A pretty common use case we see is people have a roll-up table. This is the hourly roll-up, and so you could do that in a SQL statement. Oh, right. Insert into that table, selecting stuff, rolling it up, and putting it. Okay. So you just kind of so it's not just a returning results to the end user. Sometimes it's just go do things. One of the things that came up in the solution day that we had the other day was really around what if you mess up your primary key when you're doing your data modeling in Cassandra. It happens all the time. Sorry, happened to me all the time when I was learning it. Well, you need to actually copy the data over, like change the primary, because you can't change that. Right. There's another one of those. Well, I'll just insert into there now that I've got the right one.
Oh, that's a neat use case.
Yeah, it's a great beginner use case of because I did that a lot. I still do it, but it's a safe place, right? So anyway, the Always On SQL is this way of having this service be there. As the name implies, we want it to be always on. There's some things. There's some things here that there were some stuff. I'll talk about that in a second. There were some stuff that existed, but we really wanted to say that Always On SQL was ready for being in production. Right. This was a way that you could bank on this service being there. Cassandra is continuously available. Right. It's always there to do what you need to do on that end. But we looked at what DSE Analytics had and the broader Spark community had for doing like SQL. It didn't rise to the same level. And that's sort of where we said, well, we got to make this better because the whole platform needs to be kind of the same level of expectation. I'll say Cassandra puts out a pretty hard bar. The brass ring is pretty hard to grab, and we're always trying to improve that. I would say that goes across. I'll make a plug for all of the product. we all sort of try, especially on availability, to get to the same level because it's such a good value proposition. So what existed before? There was a thing in the Spark community called the Spark SQL Thrift Server.
Okay.
So I always comment, yeah, I know, Thrift. So Thrift, and this is like, I'm so angry at Spark because the Cassandra community had just gotten rid of the word.
Yeah, that's become like a tainted word now.
I know.
It's dirty.
and I've talked to the Spark developers who were like, we never should have called it Thrift. It's an underlying library, and we didn't need the but funny. The Spark SQL Thrift Server was this ODBC, JDBC idea.
Okay.
It's been around at least since DSE 4.8, so Spark 1.4 might be a little earlier.
Yeah.
And the problem with it, I mean, there's a number of problems with it that I look at as, well, it's neat, it solves part of my problem, but it leaves a lot to be desired. The first part is ODBC, JDBC, I can make a connection, issue a query, and do things. Well, that sounds good. You know, that's a pretty good start.
Yeah.
What do we do? How do you start it? Well, you start it by running a command line start it. And then if it fails, if somebody kicks the plug out of it, then it stops.
Right.
And now you need to so we actually
you have to be aware of that, then you have to start it up. Yeah,
there are actually people who sit there and have written up scripting where like every second they'll go and see if the process is still running, and if not, restart it. And you're like, well, that's terrible.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Right,
yeah,
and it's on one
I had unfortunate face on there for a moment. You made me cringe a little bit.
We've all been there. You do what you have to do.
Yeah, totally.
But I think as you know, this is an area we could improve.
Okay.
Another one is security. When the Spark SQL Thrift Server is connecting to Cassandra, it does it as a single user.
Okay.
And so now you have this security problem of, I don't want all my clients being me. I want them to be who they are.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we can do that as well.
Okay.
So we've got this always on problem. We've got security. I think those are probably, well, when you get into this always on thing, you also want to think about caching. So one of the value props of Spark is you can do some stuff and bring a data set into RAM.
Yep.
And then you can interrogate this data set in RAM. Well, if the service is going to be restarted automatically,
right?
What do we do with that cache?
Yeah, okay.
So, so let's talk about that when we get about to how the restarting kind of thing comes. But that's another area where we're like, well, we don't want to lose this really nice feature to sacrifice for it.
So wait. I want to dig into this a little bit. So
Yeah.
if I am interpreting this right, what I think I just heard you say was that from the always-on perspective, once you have that enabled and it's running, right, that if for some reason that goes down, the Spark service goes down on a particular node, that would come up on a new node, and the cache will also come along with it?
Yeah, so yes. So what we do when we say we want to cache the data, because there's a couple things, when you think about this a little bit, you go, hold on, if we do this wrong, then the user is going to be totally confused.
Yeah.
When you take the cache, you're taking kind of a snapshot of the data that you want and putting it into RAM.
Okay.
So if the node, if it goes down and you go, well, let's just rerun that query and bring it into RAM, well, what if the underlying data in Cassandra is moved?
Right.
Now I'm not getting the same data.
That's right.
So that's a problem. So what we said was, well, if we're going to do this durable or recacheable cache.
Yeah. Recacheable cache.
Yeah. We take a snapshot and put it onto DSEFS.
Okay.
And then we read the cache from DSEFS. Huh. So we have this, take a step back, DSEFS is our distributed file system, comes with DSE. Okay. It's also always on and scale out. We need a file system for some Spark things.
Is DSEFS required for always on?
It is. And so it comes with it. It's necessary in there.
And is that because of this capability, or?
It's actually, Spark in general needs a place to have a file system, and there are benefits of having it right there.
Okay.
If you don't put any real data in it, it doesn't actually occupy much resources at all.
Okay.
But it is there as a resource for a number of things, and that's a whole other thing.
Whole other topic, right.
So we take a snapshot because we have this nice file system there, and now the cache is from the snapshot. So when it restarts, it recaches from the snapshot. So you know you're getting into RAM the exact same thing.
That's cool.
We do decide to be lazy on the recaching because we don't want to stop the service from coming back up.
Right.
So the first time you hit it after the restart, it'll be a little bit longer than normal.
Right.
We felt like it was we
had
to make a trade-off.
Yeah, no, totally. I get it.
So that's there. We talked about, the thing restarts on its own.
Okay.
Couple things you got to worry about on the restarting. The first one is anybody who's done, I think everybody's first experience with Spark is probably about the same. You get this thing running, you run the DSE Spark shell, the REPL, it's running, and then you're like, oh, I'll run another REPL to kind of do something, and the second one is waiting because all the resources were taken from the
it's got to wait for the first one.
And you're like, well, so if it's always on, how do I make sure that like he gets to jump to the front of the line?
Okay.
We actually didn't make him jump to the front of the line. We made a whole other line for him. So in DSE 5.1, we introduced this thing called workpools.
Okay.
They were relatively limited back then. And the biggest use that we've got of them so far is that in 6.0, we made a always-on SQL workpool. And so we take a pool of the resources. You say, I'm going to dedicate this much to Spark when you do your configuration. And of that, we're going to slice off a little bit and ring fence that, and only always-on SQL.
So what happens if I want to perform, say, like a Gremlin OLAP query? What happens?
Right. So Gremlin OLAP queries involve their own Spark process and service, and they will start up and use this, I'll call it the default pool of everything that's
not Is that the same for just straight up Spark Shell?
Yep, and so basically...
So Always On has its own pool. So Always On SQL has its own pool, and then the others have this general work pool.
If you think about it like with the way, compare it to like DSE 5.1, everything right now in DSE 5.1 goes against one pool. Right?
Okay.
And so what we're saying is that the default pool is now that same one pool.
Okay.
Always on SQL has its own. And we're thinking about, like, are there other ways that we might make other pools that are worthwhile? But for now, we've kind of kept that.
So is that automatically managed? So if I start up, start up Always On SQL and that kind of deal as part of my workload, along with analytics, obviously, do I have to do anything more to get the capability you're talking about, or is that just there? It's baked?
Yeah, so in the configuration, you set up right there, and so when you enable Always On, you tell it how many resources, this node, when you set up the one node, how many is it going to donate to Always On SQL? And every node does that.
Okay.
So you'll say something like, this node might have 10 cores and 100 gigs of RAM it can donate to Spark.
Okay.
And of that, we'll take 2 cores and 2 gigs of RAM or 20 gigs of RAM or something and put it on Always On.
I see.
Right.
I see.
And so now you have these 2 separate sets, and that sort of allows so that if the process dies, if somebody kicks the plug out of the machine, it'll start up again on another machine. That's the other thing we should talk about. It'll start up on another machine, but the resources will already have been ring fenced. Nothing else is got access to it.
That's cool. Okay.
The starting up on another machine, we do a quick little leader election. We'll find a guy we like to do that. You have this problem from an ODBC, JDBC sense of, how do I know where that is? I need to make a connection. So we actually have a service. There's an internal Cassandra or DSE driver call, but we also have a little REST service where you can just ping and get back, hey, this is the IP address you should connect to.
Oh, okay. So there's like one location that you hit, and then from there you'll get back where the thing is.
Right.
So
nodes
if it changes, if it changes location, from my standpoint, from an application developer standpoint or whatever, if I'm using connector to talk to the thing, I don't have to keep tracking it all over the place.
That's right. And we're working with the folks who build our driver, our ODBC, JDBC drivers, they're a partner of ours, about making that automatic. So you don't have to like chase anything.
That's cool.
So that's coming. I thought it would already be here by now, but it's coming. So yeah, so that you have this thing of now it can go down and come up automatically on its own.
Okay.
It does do these recaching thing, and so in that sense we know that it'll always come back up, and so that's sort of we want to make sure that that works, so you can deploy that in for real.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of there was another thing that we had said we were
the structured streaming.
Structured streaming.
Yeah, I wanted to get into it because one last question though on the Always On though.
Yeah.
So if I start an analytics workload on my node, is that just automatic?
So it's a good question. So we at DataStax sometimes try to default things to off for the first release, so that we don't surprise you. So node sync, another big feature that's in DSE 6.
Same thing. Yeah. You have to enable it for your cable, I almost said cable space.
Yeah. No, not for the cable space.
But you have to enable it for a key space or a table if it's there.
That's right.
But you have to enable it. So is it the same with this? It's there, but you have to tell it, hey, go ahead.
You have to turn it on, right? Okay. And I think in the future we'll probably just default it to on
once we've had more time.
That's right. Okay. And so, but no, there's that piece. I know what I was going to say before we move off of Always On SQL was around the security. I said we're going to need to have a security thing going. Right. There's a capability that came in DSE 5.1 called proxy execution. This is in Cassandra or our enhancements to it, where you can actually tell the system and grant it and say, I will let David run queries as Brian. That's a grantable privilege.
Scary.
It is.
That is scary.
There is a use case.
I mean, scary for me. Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, I wouldn't. Maybe I'll.
I know what you're saying.
Maybe I'll pick somebody else.
Yeah.
I was going to say Patrick, but I don't think that's a good idea either. Anyhow, the idea being, the original idea was you have a web server, and it's authenticated users to it. That web server makes one connection to the database, but wants to execute as the authenticated user. Well, if I just rearrange a lot of words there, I could say that instead of a web server, we should have a SQL service, and it's the same deal.
Okay.
So when you authenticate to always-on SQL using the ODBC, JDBC mechanisms, or Kerberos, but let's stick with the simple one.
Yeah.
We actually have always-on SQL will turn around to DSE and actually ask it to authenticate it. Is this a real person or not? So it's one set of users managed one way. And then when you issue a query, we actually execute the query against the database as the authenticated user. So we don't worry about you being able to run as everybody running as the same person, visible of the same things. You are only able to see the tables you have access to. If you have row-level access control enabled, it's still row-level access control. All that stuff just comes for free. And so that was super important. We're going to go and talk to enterprises. They're going to be like, I can't have everybody running as you. So that's the security piece. So now you got security, you got it's always on, and robust. And I think that was sort of, for us, the first step towards a production level JDBC ODBC service.
Okay, all right. So then, let's move back into the structured streaming thing. And so what you got on that?
So structured streaming is interesting. It came out in 2.0 in Spark. And it was a new way to do streaming, and a new API, really. It's a little strange how they've talked about it, because people are like, oh, is it a new thing? And it's like, well, kind of. It's a new way into the same, some of the constructs that were there already. If you go way back to the beginning, for Spark, for batch, there were these things called RDDs, resilient distributed data sets. And for streaming, there's these things called DStreams, just discretized streams. Everybody always called them DStreams.
That's a lot easier to say.
It is. I'm impressed I got through it. So the RDDs moved on to DataFrames. They moved on to data sets. They got a lot of love, and it's actually become a really strong use. They use Catalyst now as this optimizer to do smart things for you. Meanwhile, DStreams got no love and was just limping along in its own way. The idea was, well, let's take streaming and kind of make it a lot like batch again. And so this structured streaming was this idea of, now I have stream, I have schema. With schema, I can start using optimizers to do smart things. And so there became the idea of a structured streaming is basically a table that never ends, is the way to think. And Spark thinks of it that way.
Oh, cool.
But you do need to interact with it a little differently, and you have to set up some APIs. So everybody who had a data source,
like the never-ending table story that I tried to put that together.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I failed.
No, that's all right.
I failed, but I tried anyway.
I feel like there's some Atreyu
never-ending
comments.
table story. That's right. Anyway, go on.
We'll do that in another episode. So
what's the princess's name? What's her name?
Man, it's like my whole childhood coming back. So you had to new connectors. The API didn't really settle down and become real until Spark 2.2, which is when what we incorporated in this one. So you needed to make a new sync, and then so in this one we made a structured streaming sync for the DSE database, so for writing to it. And the community had already done structured streaming sources for a lot of things. Kafka is probably the one people talk about.
I was just about to ask you about use cases, like where does this come into play?
Yeah, so Kafka, Kinesis, these streams that come in, you want to do enhancements. You might want to join with data in Cassandra, like we were talking about before, as the direct join, kind of get to pick that up for free, and then write into the database. We see that often, connect to a stream, and as it comes in, enhance it, modify it, maybe filter it, and then deposit what you need into the database, and now you're off to the races in the database. We need to make that connector. By making that connector, we tap now into all the benefits of structured streaming that Spark has been doing for this use case that is way better than just using DStreams. So now we're coming up, but we wanted to wait. Let's see, DSE 5.1 came out with Spark 2.0. And I think it was, well, this is a really experimental API. It might change a lot. We're going to be a little more cautious on this one. And now we're like, oh, it's ready. It's graduated, and we're ready to bring it in as well.
All right. Well, I mean, okay. So with that, as we graduate, we're graduating all of the analytics stuff. It sounds like we've actually done a lot. I mean, the DSE 6 stuff. There's a hell of a lot of stuff that has been added not only from like the performance standpoint, but resiliency, capability. I mean, all of this, like, it's exciting.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. There's a number of things that that just kind of all came together in this thing, where you look at not only is the end user getting, you know, performance and ease of use and capability, but there's also sort of like we're tying a lot of pieces together. You get search coming in. We didn't talk a little bit, but the DSE graph table, the graphs that you have in DSE graph, sometimes you just want to query the vertices, like show me all the people, you know, count how many people are from New Jersey or whatever. I don't want to really necessarily do a graph query for that. In DSE 5.1 we introduced graph frames. We actually have all the tables. We have a vertex table is registered in the catalog for SQL already. So if you just want to type in and you can kind of access it that way.
So that's accessible to it.
Yeah, so we're sort of pulling all these pieces together and
making it more unified.
Yeah, and
that's awesome.
Right, and make it simpler. I don't have to think about 8 different things. I can just think about one and get going. And I think that's a theme we in the analytics side we're really proud of it. But I think DSE in whole is sort of like, let's try to pull all these pieces together. I mean, it's not a collection of you know, Apache projects just distributed together. It's really the integration.
Oh, it's totally tightly integrated and unified. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely pushed more and more in that direction. And this latest release that we just put out is a huge step in that direction.
Yeah, I'm pretty psyched about it. It's pretty fun.
Very cool. All right, man. Well, thank you,
bet.
Brian, as usual, for all the wonderful discussion and talks. And thank you all for listening to another episode of the Distributed Data Show.
Thank you for joining us again for the Distributed Data Show. We love your feedback, so go to the Distributed Data Show page on DataStax Academy and tell us what you think. You can also find us on the DataStax Academy YouTube channel, or find our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get great podcasts. While you're there, make sure and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode.